Welcome to 1111. I have Ryan here today. Hey, Ryan.
What's up, Tony?
Good to have you. Wanted to jump right in and to the inner work questions. And what does inner work mean for you? And how did you stay committed to it?
Great question, Tony. Um, Inner work, I like the focus on inwards. So inner to me, just we're doing something internally, right? But then this focus of inwards, I'm focusing inward on me specifically. Um, we as a group touched on many topics over how to communicate with others and how to be in touch with different aspects of spirituality and awareness. This inward focus though was like, who am I? So inner work goes back to the basic question of who am I through the lens of introspection, right? So really an inward reflection of who I am. And I stay committed to that through accountability. I am not one, Tony, that I'm a motivated individual and I'm disciplined in a lot of different ways, but I am one that needs an entire team around me to keep me going. So this accountability of calls and partnerships and other brothers who were doing the same work as me is what kept me going. Likely, if I tried this on my own, I would not have been nearly as successful in the journey, focusing inward.
Mhm. Now that you've gone through the journey too with this whole curiosity of your inner world, and you don't have the traditional weekly meetings in the mastermind anymore, what do you think makes you continue being motivated about learning about yourself?
So it's funny you say that. I'm what I would consider an outgoing extrovert, right? Because people can be extroverts without being outgoing, and you can be an extroverted introvert. But I truly thrive in situations where I'm with others and do that through a gregarious way. So I am still connecting with people. Anytime I'm going through some sort of struggle, I'm finding someone that was in this group and I'm reaching out to them. Or if I have a victory, I'm doing the same. There's a small handful of us that have really connected with the app called Marco Polo, and we're still video chatting from time to time, and that's been really beneficial for me. But there's a handful of the guys you're in the group with that I randomly call, and they randomly call me, and that's proven beneficial overall.
Good. Nice. And if you look back on the 4 or 5 years or even longer that you've been with this inner work journey, what is something that you've learned and applied to your life that's really made an impact?
So there's a lot of things that really worked for me, but there were two things in particular that I'll take with me forever. And one was when we were in Colorado, and Dom's coach had us do the squat and focus on embracing being uncomfortable and what our body does and what we do, what our mind does, what our spirit does whenever we're uncomfortable, and to embrace that. And I think that ties directly in with this part of finding joyful identity in every circumstance in my life. So when good things happen, or if there's something that I excel at, it's really easy for me to find joyful identity. It's like, yeah, it's who I am. I'm an outgoing extrovert. I love that about me. That's part of my joyful identity. But it's whenever I have times when I'm uncomfortable, or I have times when I struggle, or maybe a situation's really tough for me, and saying I'm going to find joyful identity in this moment and embrace it. I am bipolar, and for a lot of my life I saw it as a negative aspect, but then I can now find joyful identity in the fact that there's a part of me that's very creative. There's a part of me that feels emotion very strongly, and I'm thankful for that, right? I have joyful identity for that. And once I can accept that of who I am, then I can find ways to really embrace it. And sometimes that means saying, like, hey, you've been there for me. This anxiety, for example, you have played a role in my life. You have kept me safe. You've kept me sheltered. You've kept me from going astray, but I no longer need you in my life anymore. And so I'm able to find ways to approach areas of my life with joyful identity and saying, I'm thankful for that part of my life. I'm thankful for that struggle. Maybe I'll embrace you. Maybe I don't need you right now. So maybe I'll come back to you later in the future. But finding joyful identity in the uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's an interesting process that you're going through, like an amazing awareness technique to be able to recognize something may be off, and you dive in to say, what is that? And then there's like a reframe process to look
Right.
at being
Yeah.
joyful about it.
Yeah. So someone said at one point a positive reframe upgrade, and that stuck with me. So a positive reframe upgrade of the state of mind that I'm currently in. And it flips the switch, right? From maybe I'm anxious, but a positive reframe upgrade is maybe I'm cautious. And in this moment, I need to be cautious, right? We tie back to the bipolar episodes. Maybe I'm manic right now, which can have all these negative connotations to it, right? Or maybe it could be a positive reframe upgrade of saying, like, hey, I am living my life in the moment and fully embracing what life is right now. And because that positive reframe upgrade and the awareness, and I can put boundaries around it, right? And so instead of going crazy in my manic episodes, I can say, well, I'm going to embrace life the way it is right now with the guardrails and structures that I have in place that I've learned how to use over the many, many years of doing this kind of work, right? And that's not just from a mental health journey, that's just from an everyday journey part of my life.
Mm-hmm. I really love that framework and the ability to recognize when things are off. Do you struggle with that, or can you? Have you gotten to the point where you feel it's pretty quick that you know you're off and you're trying to move into that joy? What's joyful about this? That reframe mindset.
So, yes and no. Yes, in the areas that I've really worked and been very intentional about.
Hmm.
I can recognize that. We in the group would sit in awareness of what did Tom call it? You might have to help me out on this. The emotional fluency,
Hmm.
being aware of this wide spectrum of emotions this that we can feel as humans, and being able to pinpoint what that emotion might be. So whenever I'm feeling low or depressed, then I can pinpoint that and then say, okay, where am I at right now? What emotion am I feeling? And what systems have I put in place in my life that can help me either fully embrace the moment or to positive reframe, upgrade where I'm at? But we're complex humans, right, Tony? So I have all these emotions that can go unchecked that I'm not aware of, and they're happening. And I have a small group of people in my life that will hopefully their role is to call me out whenever they notice that maybe something's a little askew. Because I have blind spots, right? You have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And then I can then start doing the work and putting in the systems in place to monitor that behavior and help me guide me on that. Because it's like we go back to the beginning. I literally can't do it by myself. It works until it doesn't, right, Tony? I can do it until I can't do it. I can have discipline out the wazoo until I got the plate of cookies that are right in front of me and they smell really good. At some point, we're going to not be able to rely on our own self discipline. So for me, it's coming to a point to where it's like, okay, I'm aware that I can't do this on my own. And so having this system of people to help me out, and then having this guardrail, the procedures and operations in place once I'm aware, emotional fluency of the situation that I'm in to help guide me along the way. Steps, methodical steps with the accountability on the side of it.
Is there any other topics that you think would be appropriate to bring up around inner work that you want anybody to really understand and walk away with?
Yes, there was a situation where we did soul gazing, right? Tony, I know you're familiar with this
Mm-hmm.
exercise where you look someone in the eyes without distraction for a certain period of time. And I looked at a man in his eyes and I felt so much emotion from him just by looking in his eyes, right? And I feel like for me, that so much of what I do is focused on me that whenever I'm able to uh, use what I've learned and discerned and to help someone out and notice that about where they're at in their journey, it helps me just as much, right? So I learn through your work too. So if you're working on something, Tony, and I am just helping facilitate that, whether that's asking questions or just being an attentive listener or being a support system in whatever capacity, I gain from that too. So part of inner work is helping someone else do inner work too. And it's not a heavy-handed help necessarily. And some of us are really good at that, right? I mean, I know people that can are so wise they can impart wisdom and provide direction um, and that's great. And I know others that just listening, be supportive is a really powerful tool too, so that someone can process what they're doing verbally. Just being a part of someone's journey of inner work increases your inner work, increases my inner work.
Yeah, that's such a strong point of how there's various people that they've took the courage to join a group and sit there for week after week, feeling like they may not be getting much out of it, but they're slowly learning through other people's experiences. They may not want to share because they don't know quite yet how and what to share, but it's been amazing to hear how others will eventually learn from other people's experience by that relationship of emotions that they share.
Right.
And then eventually it's their time that's like, oh, it's almost like a pop. It's like everything's been building up. And then finally it's like, oh, now I can go share. But I think the big point is having the courage to be in a group and be an observer. You're gonna learn about yourself because you're able to relate to other people's emotions.
Yeah. No, you and I both can probably pinpoint a dozen or so different moments of men working on something that's like long lasting, sticks. What they were working through sticks with me, and I'll never forget it. And that's the beauty of being a part of a group like that.
Mhm. Yeah. And what do you think if you look back at your younger, let's say 22-year-old self, what advice would you give them? Give young Ryan knowing what you know now?
Man, I lived with so much shame for so many decades, Tony. Um, and talking about embracing who we are and finding joyful identity. Shame is such a killer. There is nothing positive about shame. There's no joyful identity in shame. Looking back at my life, college age, 21 year old Ryan, and saying, like, hey, you are good, and you're going to make mistakes, but you are good. And like, find the good in you and find the good in others and find joy in who you are. Because I grew up in this evangelical hell fire brimstone type of church growing up, and everything I did was wrong. That was kind of the message that came out. So I live my life in a way that's like, well, I'm wrong if I do X, Y, or Z, and there's something broken about me.
Mhm.
And the truth is, I was just being a normal human, right? I was living my life in a way that a normal human would live. And go back and say, like, you're not wrong, you're good. And you may make mistakes and you may hurt other people and you're going to hurt yourself. And there's consequences for all of those actions, right? But like, find joyful identity in who you are now and embrace who you are now and accept who you are now. And then you can build upon, I can build upon that for decades on top of that. And that journey for me Tony, started like 6 years ago of acceptance of who I am. And I wish that I would have started that as a 20-year-old, but I started as a 35-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is great. Most people don't start that journey the whole entire life. I started as a 35-year-old, and I'm happy about it and going to go on that journey until the day I die. But that's yeah, I would go back and tell them like, hey, you're good, accept who you are, build from that.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful message. And shame is such a popular topic that most people don't realize they're carrying their whole lives until something
Yeah,
comes up. I know even for me, I had that shame of being a bad person because of being younger. And my dad said, you know, you're going to go to hell thinking like that. And I built this, I'm a bad person because I think these things and I
right.
feel these things. And it just kind of evolved for me in not sharing my opinion as I grew older until one day I really understood what shame was and what guilt was to delineate that. And it was through someone else's story that's like, I relate to that. And holy crap, I had that. And then it's being curious enough to go back and see where did it start and how did it unfold. And so I appreciate you bringing that story up because I think a lot of people need to be able to relate to that, like I did, to really understand what shame is and see what can unfold from their past.
Yeah, it's a deconstruction process, Tony. Um, I learned a long time ago at the start of my journey of like we have all these layers to us that help protect the most vulnerable inner child inside of us. And the most extreme are going to be medicators, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever that could be, to make us feel numb to the things that we're the most scared of, right? And you have to pull those away, and then you can say, well, these are the coping mechanisms that I use, healthy or unhealthy, to make it to where I can't feel. You have to pull back that layer and say, these are the systems I've put in place to protect myself. Pull back that layer, then it's like, hey, little guy, little inner person, I see you there. Now can I love and support and encourage you and move forward on that journey. So it's peeling back every single layer
Mm-hmm.
of what we're doing to hide from that little guy that needs protection.
Mm-hmm. That was said very well. Thank you for
You're welcome.
elaborating on that. That's a very good formula of what we all need to stay curious and work with others to unfold.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for sharing your insights. Appreciate the time here. And thank you again.
You're welcome. Good seeing you, Tony.